Good morning, class 7. Let's continue with chapter 9 of civics that we have started in the previous class, struggles for equality. So we have talked about that how inequality has been there, and we have discussed about it in the previous chapters as well. You have studied about Rosa Parks in chapter 1, and like the different types of discrimination, that if a person belonging to a particular religion was not given the house on rent or the apartment on rent, then there are discrimination for in the case of gender also, that girl child is not going to school, or if going to school their names are struck off due to certain reasons, maybe discrimination or poverty. So all that we have studied in the previous chapter. Then we have talked about the poverty, lack of uh, can be the one of the most important cause, and other causes which leads to the discrimination or this inequality is then we have talked about different people in different chapters, about that person belonging to a particular caste was asked to sweep the floor of the school. A child was in fact asked to sweep the floor just because he was from particular caste. So all that we have studied in the previous chapters, and in the previous class we have discussed it. Let's continue for struggles for equality. Throughout the world, in every community, village, city, and town, you will find that there are some people who are known and respected because of their fight for equality. These people may have stood up against an act of discrimination that they faced or which they witnessed, or they may be well respected because they treat people person with dignity and are therefore trusted and called upon to resolve issues. So we have talked about different people who are respected in particular society because they have done something for the society, so they get the respect. Then often some of these persons become more widely recognized because they have the support or represent large numbers of people who have united to address a particular issue of inequality. In India, there are several struggles in which people have come together to fight for issues that they believe are important. So, in chapter 5, you read about the methods used by the women's movement to raise issues of equality. The Tava Matsa Sangh in Madhya Pradesh is another example of people coming together to fight for an issue. In the previous chapter, we have studied that how women they join hands and what are the methods they use. Like it can be spreading awareness, campaigning, and all that. So here we will be talking about the Matsang in Madhya Pradesh, which is another example of coming together to fight for an issue. There are many such struggles, such as those among beedi workers, fisher folk, agricultural laborers, slum dwellers, and each group is struggling for justice in its own way. There are also many attempts to form cooperatives or other collective ways by which people can have more control over resources. So let's see what is Tava Matsang. When dams are built or forest areas declared sanctuaries for animals, thousands of people are displaced. Whole villages are uprooted, and people are forced to go and build new houses, start new lives elsewhere. So, if a particular place the dams are being built, or if a particular forest has been declared as sanctuary for animals, then obviously people living in that area they lose their houses and they have to move to, or they are displaced, so they have to move to new place and look for a place or new place for living. Most of these people are poor. In urban areas too, bastis in which people live are often uprooted. Some of them are relocated to areas outside the city. Their work, as well as their children's schooling, is severely disrupted because of the distance from the outskirts of the city to these locations. So obviously the education and everything gets disturbed when they are moving from one place to another. The displacement of people and communities is a problem that has become quite widespread in our country. People usually come together to fight against this. There are several organizations across the country fighting for the rights of the displaced. In this chapter, we will read about Tawa Mat Sangh, a federation of fisher workers cooperative, an organization fighting for the rights of the displaced forest dwellers of the Satpura forest in Madhya Pradesh. So here we are going to talk about the group Dawa Mat Sangh, which is a federation or you can say a group of fishermen who it's like a cooperative who are fighting for their rights and who have been displaced forest dwellers of Satpura forest, which is in Madhya Pradesh. Organizing in the or originating in the I'm sorry children originating in the Mahadev Hills of Chindwara district. The Tawa flows, Tawa it's a river. Now before we proceed, I'll just tell you that it's a river. The name is Tawa and it flows through Bitul before joining the Narmada. It goes into the Narmada in Hoshangabad. The Tawa Dam began to be built in 1958 and was completed in 1978. That means it took 20 years. It submerged large area of forest and agricultural land. The forest dwellers were left with nothing. Obviously, those who were living there, because the forest was merged in it, so they were left with nothing. Some of the displaced people settled around the reservoir and apart from their Miagar farm, found a livelihood in fishing. Miagar means a small farm. So they found their livelihood in like they started doing fishing. They earned very little. A dam built across a river at sites where one can collect a lot of water. This forms a reservoir, and as the water collects, it submerges vast areas of land. This is because the wall of the dam across the river is high and the water spreads over a large area. This is a photo of submergence caused by the Tehri Dam on Uttarakhand. The old Tehri town and 100 villages, some totally and some partially, were submerged by this dam. Nearly 1 lakh people were displaced. So, if you have been to Uttarakhand and have seen this, it was like the whole like area was submerged in the water. In 1994, the government gave the rights for fishing in the Tawa reservoir to private contractors. The contractors drove the local people away and got cheap labor from outside. The contractors began to threaten the villagers who did not want to leave by bringing in handlooms. The villagers stood united and decided that it was time to set up an organization and do something to protect their right. So what the government did was it gave the rights to private contractors, and they came in and they wanted to displace move the people who were already living there to new places. But then people realized that it was high time they should join hands together and raise a voice against the uh, exploitation which they were facing. The newly formed Tawa Mat Sangh organized rallies and chakka jam, that is road blockage. They blocked the road, that is like they do not allow the vehicles to move on the road, demanding their right to continue fishing for their livelihood. In response to their protest, the government created a committee to assess the issue. The committee recommended that fishing rights to be granted to the villagers for their livelihood. So in 1996, the Madhya Pradesh government decided to give the people displaced by the Tawa Dam the fishing rights for the reservoir. A 5-year lease agreement was signed 2 months later on 2nd January 1997. People from 33 villages of Tawa started the new year with the first catch. So finally, because they have joined hands together to raise their voice, the government had to listen to or pay heed to their request, and they appointed a committee to look into the matter, and the committee which had given the unbiased decision and said that it should be the rights should be given to the people living in the village that is in the nearby Tower region. So the government had to sign a lease for 5 years, and on 2nd January 1977, 33 villages of Tawa they got the right and they began the new year with the first catch. So you can say that it is like a story: united we stand, divided we fall. So it's one of the very good examples, and it's a live example, it's something which has happened in reality. So that tells us that we should be united to take action unitedly, or we are joining hands together if the reason has to be very acceptable or appropriate. So that's all for today, class. Take care of yourselves. Be safe at home. Thank you.